Welcome to the Relentless Redstorm, where debate becomes energy, energy becomes culture, and every fan has a voice. I'm Joson Sanon, alongside my partner in the storm, Darrell Jazz Johnson. We bring you the pulse of New York, the pride of St. John's, and the relentless heartbeat of Redstorm Nation. Tonight we're diving deep, not just into the game, but into the soul of the city that breathes it. Because here in New York, fandom isn't just passion, it's identity, and when the first whistle blows, you're not just watching, you're part of the storm. Let's debate, let's connect, and let's get relentless. All right, Darrell. New York City, the place where moments are magnified and mistakes are remembered. On New Year's Eve, the Red Storm lights up the nation's capital for 95 points. They have a statement win against Georgetown. 3 days later, New Year, they come to Madison Square Garden at home. It's electric, double digits late, until the floor tilts and Providence wins 77-71. I got to ask you the big question here, which I have been talking about on every episode now. Can this team close? Because in the Big East, it's not just about leading, it's about finishing.
Well, the results through 14 games, the obvious answer is no. Um, and, I'll push back a little bit on a statement win. I don't know if beating Georgetown is a statement win. Um, but everybody deserves blame. Every single player, and I know Zuby had a career high in points and rebounds yesterday. He also turned the ball over 7 times. Turned the ball over 7 times. I believe he's 14 for 23 from the free throw line. He cuts down on those turnovers. He hits a couple more free throws. Yesterday's horrible loss turns into a lackluster win. Um, Dylan Darling, and Rick Pitino mentioned it probably at least 3 times during the post-game press conference yesterday. Um, pull up his season stats. As much as I hate to agree with someone who wrote this on a Facebook uh, post one time, he may not be a Big East caliber guard. Um, he's shooting 40% on the season, 32% from three. He took one shot yesterday. Pitino called him out for committing a horrible foul where he slapped the wrist of a Providence player as he's going up to shoot a 3-pointer. It was a huge momentum shift in the game. Um, I don't know how often you can play him. Ian Jackson, Pitino has talked about this kid's talent. If the guy is as talented as you believe he is, play him. Play him. Play him. You have one guy who you have at the point guard who shoots the ball too much, and then you have another guy who doesn't want to shoot. Dylan Darling shot one shot yesterday. I believe Ian Jackson was 1 of 8 yesterday. Um, this team is 9-5 with 17 games remaining, but based on the current performance, I would say horrible roster construction by not having a seasoned point guard on this team. That was supposed to be Dylan Darling and or Ian Jackson. Uh, they have not succeeded in that role. Uh, Again, Zuby was great on the offensive rebounds yesterday. This team still struggles to get defensive rebounding, including on a key possession in yesterday's game where they forced a miss down by 2, I believe, and then gave up an offensive rebound. So, the most frustrating thing about all 5 losses is that you can see ways where the team could have pulled off the victory. With the Kentucky loss probably being the one that would take a lot of imagination seeing them win that game. But of the 5 losses, 4 of them were certainly winnable, but I do not see this team improving. Um, and I'm gonna throw the Georgetown game on New Year's Eve away because, as we talked about last week, difficult spot for both teams playing on New Year's Eve at 8 o'clock as college students, college student athletes. That was a difficult spot for both teams. But again, for this team to go out and lose a game at Madison Square Garden in which they led by 13 early, in which they led by double figures in the second half is inexcusable. And everybody gets blamed from Zuby to Dylan Darling to Rick Pitino and everyone else involved with this team.
So, uh, okay, you have laid down the gauntlet in terms of your satisfaction not being there with this team. And, I want to get into a couple of things, about Zuby. So, in December, Zuby had a number of games where he was defensively focused. And then between Georgetown and Providence, he, scores at least 25 and 10 in both games, 25 and 10 in Georgetown game, and then 33 and 15 in the Providence game. And, this brings up a point. So in Big East games, his team seems to focus on giving him the ball inside. In SC games, they get away from Zuby. Now, one thing that Pitino said last night that was very interesting to me is that his intention was not for them to focus on Zuby. That he was frustrated all night with the fact that because they were missing shots, they kept just giving the ball to Zuby as sort of a bailout for their own lack of confidence. And I think I'm curious as to how this late in the season, and it's not late, it's the second quarter of the season, but it's still important that you are recognizing that they're not making the progress, and so therefore have they hit the ceiling in terms of their performance level? I don't think they have. I think that this is something where the players are still resisting the Rick Pitino installation of resilience into the team by focusing on defense. They collapsed last night, and that collapse was absolutely unacceptable and horrible. I can only imagine what tonight and tomorrow are going to be like for that team in terms of the tape room and going through the footage and analysis as well as the drills, because this really came down to poor choices on offense and defense. Zuby Ejiofor has absolutely dominated in the Big East. He has not dominated in the SEC, and I think that's a big thing to kind of look at is, why is the game plan so different when they play against Big East opponents, and Zuby absolutely, dominates. And then when they have non-conference opponents in big games, the rest of the team seems to feel that they can play. But in both cases, it's all about their choices defensively, and then it leaks out to the offensive, choices. Last night, Providence absolutely let St. John's shoot and concentrated on, just basically staying in there and not letting their heads out of the game. And so when, in the late part of the second half, they had an opportunity and went on a run, it was St. John's that fell apart. And that, that collapse had everything to do with the fact that they were working the ball one way and they stopped working the ball that way. And then every time they didn't have a good possession, rather than run back and, make sure that they were defensively focused on getting a stop, getting a deflection, it was almost like they became paralyzed. And I think that's what's fascinating to watch, how this team goes through analysis paralysis at the end of the games.
I agree with most of what you said. Let me add Joson Sanon to my rant. Shooting 35% on the season. He's playing 25 minutes a game. Ian Jackson's playing less than 20. I mean, what are we doing here? What are we doing? The rotations are horrible at this point. The lack of consistency in minutes is certainly not making this team better. And again, yesterday's game was certainly horrific, was certainly the worst loss of the season, just when you look at the talent level that they were playing against. And again, an easily winnable game. Somebody makes a big shot besides Zuby Ejiofor, unless that big shot comes from the free throw line. He did miss 9 free throws. Ian Jackson was actually 4 from the free throw line. So though he shot horribly from the field, he did make his free throws. And he is an aggressive player. I would have liked to see him be in game more, take the ball to the basket. Who knows? He would have had 6 free throws, 8 free throws. So many things that could have won this game, but this team's inability to close out, not only against good teams, but now we're seeing against a team that's unranked, a team that's expected to finish near the bottom of the Big East. It's inexcusable. And again, you got to point fingers at everybody, including the roster construction. Because again, you can't. I'm starting to believe that the point guard issue cannot be fixed. What is the best way to deal with it? I don't know, but it does not look like this roster has a capable point guard. And with how important guard play is in college basketball, it's inexcusable to put all your faith into Dylan Darling and Ian Jackson.
So I think on the point of both of those players, the issue yesterday was they both got into foul trouble, and Pitino had to turn to Leftopoulos at Lefteris Leptopoulos at the point guard position. And here's another thing that, to the point of the roster construction, Pitino has a very deep roster. It's absolutely, one of the deepest rosters in the game right now in terms of the players that he can put on the floor with comfort, except to your position, to your point, the point guard position. And yesterday, what was very apparent, and credit to Kim English and the Providence coaching staff, because they really looked at the film of the St. John's losses. It was very obvious that they recognized this is a team that can score, this is a team that can press, this is a team that can make a lot of problems for the other team. But if you hang in there, number one, and number two, you break them down by getting downhill and getting inside points to the basket, these guys collapse and they don't make good decisions at the end of close games. And that, was really English's, focus in the second half. He kept his players in the game, get them to understand that, Ejiofor is the only player that's really making a difference. And he even said it. They circled 11 offensive rebounds, on the board. because Ejiofor had 9 in the first half. Ejiofor had 18 points, 9 rebounds offensive in the first half. And he finished with 15 and 33. So you have to look at the second half and say, okay, Providence focused in on him on the second half. Where was Bryce Hopkins? Where was Dylan Mitchell? Where was Ruben Prey? The other bigs were not anywhere to be seen. And then you've got both your point guards in foul trouble all night. You have, Lefteris basically, juggling with Hopkins in terms of bringing the ball up the court. And Hopkins brought the ball up the court most of the night. I think that was one of the most noticeable things about the game was that Hopkins was in the point position a lot of the time and was moving around the floor, and he did get 10 rebounds, and I think he had 9 points. There was no other St. John's player in double figures. And it was very, very evident that the team just did not have any confidence other than Ejiofor. So I have to ask you, why does this team not feed off of Ejiofor's confidence, number one? And then number two is, what's it going to take?
Well, to push back a little bit, Dylan Darling finished the game with 3 fouls. And he played 19 minutes, I believe. Ian Jackson finished the game with 4 fouls, only played 14 minutes. Again, the kid is on his team. He has pro talent. Play him. Let him foul out. Let him shoot himself off the court, which is what he may have done yesterday, but there is absolutely no way that Dylan Darling should be getting more minutes than Ian Jackson. Absolutely no way that should be happening. And Zuby is very confident on both ends of the floor until he gets to the free throw line. Not confident as a free throw shooter. It showed. And he's turning the ball over way too much. Again, he's at 7 turnovers. I mean, he almost had one of those bad triple doubles. 7 turnovers is way too much. It's the point guard play. That's the issue. You have, again, you have one point guard who took 8 shots in 14 minutes, only hit one of them, did get to the free throw line 4 times, and believe it or not, I'm not the biggest fan in plus minus, but Ian Jackson was a +4 yesterday, which I believe was the highest on the team. You can't play Dylan Darling more minutes than Ian Jackson, and you can't have Dylan Darling on the floor if he's only going to shoot the ball once. What is he doing out there? And then he that foul on the 4-point play was not his only bad foul of the day. Of the 3 fouls he committed, at least 2 of them were bad fouls. So, and Lefteris is not the answer either. No point guard, no capable point guard. I don't see how that is going to get better overnight, particularly when you're playing against seasoned teams. And I got to be honest, we all assumed, including the people that vote on these preseason polls, that St. John's was either the first or second best team in the Big East. Number 5 in the preseason, top 25. Picked to finish first in the Big East in the preseason coaches poll. So even the coaches in the Big East got this wrong. At this point in time, I'm willing to say Uh, Both Villanova and Seton Hall may be better than St. John's, and those may not be the only teams that are better than them. I mean, they got beat by Providence yesterday. So who's to say Providence doesn't go 2-0 against St. John's when the Johnnies go to Providence to play on the road? Who's to say?
Yeah, you're right. There's definitely a lot more uncertainty with this team than anyone likes to feel right now. Obviously, you have a lot of concern from the fans. A lot of, unfortunately, it seems like many fans have written this team off for March already. I'm not so certain. I mean, they have Butler coming up, and that's going to be a tough game at the Hinkle Fieldhouse. And, Finley Bizjack, who is a far better comparison at the point guard position. He's one of the leading scorers in the Big East. Same size as Dylan Darling, by the way, but a 4 year player at I think 4 years. This is a senior year, if I remember correctly. And an astounding player. And Butler is going to be a tough team. They score 90 points a game. They're 10-4. They're 1-2 in the Big East. But this is a game that St. John's is expected to win, or was expected to win prior to the Providence game. So looking ahead to Tuesday in Butler, is this a bounce back game for St. John's? Is this what we're going to see for the rest of the season? They have bounce back games, they go on a little run, and then they lose another one? Or do you think it's going to be much more of an up and down roller coaster for this team?
Well, there's nothing that we have seen this season that suggests anything other than this being an up and down season for this team. They lack consistency. They lack consistency on both ends of the floor. And to again, I add somebody who was very hopeful in November, in December. I think the lack of credible point guard play is unfixable at this point. I hope to be wrong, but I think it's unfixable and it's impacting everybody on this team on the offensive end. And with young players, you know, the offensive end, even though it shouldn't affect your effort on the defensive end, it absolutely does.
Well, I'm going to take a different tack. It's the beginning of January, first game of the new year. Uh, to get beaten on your home floor the way that St. John's was beaten in this game, it's got to force some type of psychological chemistry to change in the players as a group. I'm going to take the approach that this is definitely going to be a unexpected opportunity for them to really come together. I definitely thought that Kentucky was going to be that pivotal game, and I think it was the pivotal game for the coaches in terms of thinking that this team was going to know where they stood and be able to start climbing going into the Big East schedule. This is a very different team. They're incredibly talented, but they're not mentally in shape for these types of games. And I think that yesterday's loss is something that kind of shakes you into shape because, again, to get beat the way they did on their home floor, they're going to have a chip on their shoulder now. And I hope that that chip is a very deep chip. I like to believe that they have the talent, they have the capability, and they have the coach. And it really is about the coaching staff being able to help the players understand that they've just got to do exactly what Providence did. Providence ran their game plan on them better than they have run it themselves all season. And I think that's, really what was the shocking part of the reality of yesterday's game was that St. John's was in control for 36 minutes and they were up 10 with 8 to play. And Providence goes on a 14-3 run behind their shooting guard, Stefan Vox, and they simply just rebounded the ball and prevented St. John's from closing out. It was that simple. It was not rocket science.
One thing I do want to add, as we sat there and heard Providence speak about the victory, they liked taking it to their former teammate Bryce Hopkins. So whereas they were motivated to play against him for the first time on his home floor, based on the game he had, he lacked the same motivation to go at his former teammates than that they had to go at him. And
Great point.
he did grab 10 rebounds, but he didn't shoot the ball well, and he didn't play well.
He did not look comfortable. None of them look comfortable, and I think that's the real point. And you just said it, is that Providence was playing for something. And that's what's missing with this St. John's team. And I'm hoping that out of this, real collapse, that they finally get it, that they got to be playing for something. At every, game, in every game, at every level, they've got to be playing for something. It's not just about the talent on the floor. It's about the reality that when these teams come into Madison Square Garden, it's not the unknown St. John's team of last year that everybody, was shocked by the way that they play. This is now a team that has their Big East championship from last year and was ranked 5 and was, given all the accolades in the preseason, to your point. So this team, has a swagger that they either have to get behind and defend, or they've got to find some other motivation, which is the fact that everybody's trying to kick their butt when they come into Madison Square Garden and show this team up, and they got to start playing like, you know what, you are not going to show us up in our house.
I certainly agree with that. That motivation should have been there already, and I think part of it is this team thought they were as good as the AP poll thought they were. Thought they were as good as the Big East coaches poll thought they were. During Big East Media Day, Dan Hurley mentioned St. John's. I'm pretty sure Rick Pitino mentioned UConn. He has certainly mentioned UConn during the season in various post game press conferences. UConn is much better, and I've talked about the Cauldron and Pitino mixing up these parts to see what are the best lineups, the best configuration of this team. I would have thought at 14 games into the season, we would have had a better idea of what that is more definitively than we do now. And I must say that I am shocked that we do not. And at this point in time, if this team can lose, and Brooke said this yesterday, this team can lose at home to Providence. They can lose any game on this biggest schedule.
Yeah. Yeah, until they have the mentality that they're going to be winners and absolutely commit to what it takes to be winners, the reality is that they are totally susceptible to the entire Big East. And I I have to believe that these players came to St. John's with the intention to win, that they want to win, and that again, being around Zuby and Ruben and Lefty, who were all a part of that team last year, in Sadiku, and those guys want to win. Those guys are in their ear. The reality is they have to digest it somehow. They're not digesting what it takes to truly be winners, and that's closing out games. That's not falling apart. And that is where this team really, really struggles. They have the capability. You can't dominate for 36 minutes and not be, that team, in terms of potential. It's just the actuality of being able to level up your execution in the closing minutes, to get tougher, to not let the refs' whistles bother you, to not let the other team's, tenacity get in your way. You just gotta, outwork and out hustle them. And I think that's the difference between, what this team is right now and what they need to be in order to be at the level of UConn and go into March with, that fire in their belly.
I would say at this point in time, getting to the level of UConn by next month is unattainable. Um, I I am an optimist, but I think based on what I have seen on the court, this team is incapable of beating UConn. And again, you lose to Providence at MSG, you're not beating UConn at MSG or at Stores. Um, Again, we got to see how this team bounces back against Butler on Tuesday.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Butler
There's
is
blood in the water.
not a easy place to play at. Um, so before we can even talk about the UConns and the Villanovas and the Seton Halls, this team needs to beat Butler and Marquette, and then come back to MSG to host. I believe it's Seton Hall, or it may be Marquette, but um, left. I would have thought that this team had the capability of so it's at Butler, at Creighton, uh, and then they host Marquette, which should be a win. I mean, they really got to go 3-0 in the next three games before they face. They could at Villanova, and then um, they got to win those three games uh, to build the confidence back in this team. This team lacked confidence. Remember when Pitino talked about needing to fix Dylan Darling's shot, fix his confidence. We thought he fixed it. Not fixed. One shot in almost 20 minutes says it's not fixed. One shot in 20 minutes with poor defensive decisions tells me it may not be fixable. This against Providence. Against Providence. Not against Villanova, not against Seton Hall, not against UConn. This was against Providence. So if you can't trust him against Providence, who can you trust him against?
It's a great point. The reality is it's not just him either. And again, Ian Jackson was in foul trouble yesterday. Rick seems to have a very tight leash on Ian for some reason that only Rick knows. Between you and I, the the aggressiveness of Ian Jackson is definitely more welcome than the timidness of Dylan Darling. More importantly, is now you go into Hinkle and Butler and Finley Bizjack, who, again, is the size of Dylan Darling. He's not a big guy, yet he is a dominant player in the Big East. Has been. Last year, he gave St. John's nightmares and fits. I remember, watching the game at the Garden last year and looking at Bizjack and thinking, this kid shouldn't be on the floor. And then he went out and scored 17. And I think that you've got to put that in your mind, in terms of, how other guards are able to show up and present themselves to this team and get downhill and get the ball out, kick it out. And, that is something that the St. John's coaching staff has to figure out. The players play, but the coaches got to prepare them. And Pitino has claimed all season that his coaching staff is a staff of preparation. But clearly against Providence, they did not have their guys prepared to close out this game, and that's the difference.
Bizjack is listed at 6'4". Dylan Darling is listed at 6'1". We know both of those numbers may be exaggerated, but because we question whether Darling is really 6'1". But obviously 3 inches of height in basketball is a big difference, and I would say Bizjack is far more talented than Dylan Darling. I mean, I looked at Dylan Darling's numbers a season ago. Great numbers for mid-major. Um, it certainly hasn't translated. And again, with Ian Jackson, 4 fouls in 14 minutes, certainly didn't have the best game. Let him foul out. If he is one of the more talented players on your team, how are you going to win by not having him on the floor for 26 out of the 40 minutes in the game? You got to play the
Mm-hmm.
kid. You got to play the kid. And, I pointed at this before. Uh, Starting him, benching him, um, messes with a player's confidence. Um, Play him. Play him. You know, Sanon is playing 26 minutes a game, shooting 35%. But you can't find 20 minutes a game for Ian Jackson. Play him. So again, this is a point guard problem and a problem with the rotation, problem with the team's inability uh, to pull pull off victories when they have late leads. This team is broken. Broken. I hope it can be fixed. I'm an optimist, but uh, I don't think the point guard problem is fixable, given the roster construction. But also to add to this, and we talked about this last episode, um, Pitino, stubborn, great coach, unwilling to add, not only unwilling to add another player, he actually said uh, the players I looked at weren't good enough to really help this team turn around. That's what he's paraphrasing, but that is what he said when asked about the possibility of adding another player. Yeah. So flawed roster construction is something that we often think about more in professional basketball than in college basketball. But now with NIL, you know, roster construction is something um, that you need to obviously pay a lot of attention to, and not just the talent. And this is a flawed roster through 14 games. This is a flawed roster. Can it be fixed? Yes. Will it be fixed? We'll see.
I think that's the most important point is that, we have to see how this team plays over the next several games to see if the roster, can be fixed. And it's really, that's where it's on the coaching staff. How do they get these guys to receive the information that really is a difference between whether they stay broken or they, come back together better? It's very, very evident right now. You have a team of glass that ironically cannot defend the glass, and that's where they fall apart. Um, the the reality is that they have all the talent to be able to come together. They have a monster of a core in Zuby Ejiofor to build around. And it also makes you concerned for next year because Ejiofor is going to leave as long and with a lot of guys, and that's another reality is that these um, coaches and the teams are now building 1 year at a time with NIL. There's no longer, the recruitment of a player and cultivating them for 3 to 4 years to build a dominant, team. It's now year by year, attraction and attrition that coaches and college organizations are facing in terms of players. And the exposure of this St. John's team in terms of how you construct a roster preseason and get ranked, so high, and then struggle to really uh, play out or perform at the level of expectation of that roster. Is it the players? Is it the coaches? Right now, you could definitely point to all the players not performing, but you also have to recognize that the coaches aren't getting them to adapt. They aren't getting them to receive, the critical information that they need to be, ready for the fourth quarter, for the late second half, for the expectations of the other team and how they're going to attack their weaknesses. And I think going into this Butler game, that is what everybody who roots for St. John's is going to be looking at: is how does this team adjust, and and how do they transform themselves from a very weak defensive rebounding team into that team that can close out anybody on the schedule. And with that, I'll
And
leave you with the last word.
we're getting, they played 14 games. There are 17 left. So we're almost at the midpoint of the season. After they play Butler at Butler and at Creighton. After the Creighton game, they will be 16 games into the season and only have 15 left. So the next time we see them at Madison Square Garden, although it's still the beginning of the Big East schedule, uh, we will be on to the second half of the season. And again, I am an optimist, but I hope, but I am very cautious about this team's ability to fix the biggest problem on the team, and that's the point guard position. Rebounding is all about effort. Um, you shouldn't be making foolish plays on defense, like not boxing out once you get uh, a big stop, fouling 3-point shooters. Uh, Pitino pointed to um, some poor defensive plays by Ian Jackson as well, everywhere. Um, you know, but I look forward to watching this team. Rick Pitino is a Hall of Famer. I look forward to watching this team to see if these problems can be corrected in the near future. Hopeful, but not confident. They need to rebuild my confidence in the team, and I'm sure many of the Red Storm faithful feel the same way. Some have already given up. I've seen comments this team is lucky to be an NIT team. Uh, I'm not that far off the reservation at this point. But you know, another bad loss or two, I might be mentioning the NIT too. Who knows?
Yeah. There's a certain point where everybody gets to their wits end. I have a longer fuse. You've just been in the eye of the storm, but the conversation doesn't end here. Join us online, hit subscribe, and share your take. Where passion meets perspective, that's Relentless Redstorm. Until next time, stay focused, stay fiery, and as always, stay relentless.